Just a little nervous. I recognize some faces, some from the internet and some from just discussions. Some of the families I have actually met in person. So I'm excited about this. I've been thinking about doing something like this, but I didn't think it was going to be today. I think it would be this soon. I was just, because of, I can't cover everything, first of all. There's just no time, and I don't have enough slides. I was up till 2, finishing up the last sets of this, and I said, okay, I'm done. This is it. I can't do any more. But I think it's going to be great, because this is going to be more of a journey of how I started and how I got to where we are today. So I'm going to try to drag you along in that journey and kind of show, what we know and, what we think we know. So you're going to see things up there, and you're going to feel free to correct me if I'm obviously wrong. I'm open for all those things, and I think that's really important, because otherwise I wouldn't have this if people didn't come and give me their thoughts, opinions, and additions and things like that. So please come up to me afterwards. Let's talk. And yes. At this point, there is not much to say other than there's only really one family that came. And there are 2 brothers, and I'll just show how we kind of got to that conclusion. And I started out a lot of the same ways the people of the Islanos of Louisiana just kind of started themselves. They don't have much information to go by. That emblem that you see up there actually comes from a book that I'll talk about a little bit later. It turns out that this is probably most likely not the official coat of arms. As a matter of fact, we don't really think there is one anymore. We've dug too long and too hard, and we're just not running across anything. I like it. I'll put it up there, but I'm starting to think that might not be it. And like a lot of people who get started, you only have a few resources at your hand. And of course, I start with the basic 3, right? The Diocese of Baton Rouge Catholic Church Records, really popular. Donald Hebert's his church records in South Louisiana, that helps out a lot. And naturally, of course, Den's book. And everybody kind of gets started with that. I had the same resources everybody else began with. And if you're not familiar with these, please get very familiar with them, because they can help you out a lot for those that don't know about them. And we didn't know much. We really didn't. You can get on the internet and you can find information out, but you can't find a lot of details. You can't have something that tells you, look, this is exactly where you need to go search. You have to get creative. You have to look at a lot of sources that, maybe there's something in there, maybe there's not. This is nothing much more than I had out of Den's book. It was just 2 people's names, Cristobal Falcon and his family, and Gaspar Falcon. All I knew is they came on this boat named the San Ignacio de Loyola in 1778, and that's pretty much it. That's a picture of what the Canarian Islands would have looked like on a map around that time. And this is a typical frigate, Spanish frigate. This was what they would have boarded and come across. And there's a couple of examples there. I'm sorry the color is not looking correctly, because for some reason the projector is a little pink, and I don't know why it's a little. But you still can get a pretty good idea of what it must have been like to say, this is my family, and I'm going to leave you. I'm not going to see my parents again. I'm not going to see my brothers and sisters again. And I just had kids. I just had a couple of children, and we're going to pack up, and we're going to go across the world and then never come back. And I'm going to get on one of these things. I can only imagine what they were thinking. You get in that time machine, and you want to travel to this date, and just from the shore, watch them try to get on this boat and leave that. I don't understand that the incentive must have been very high, or the desolation must have been really high. It had to be a point where I had to make a tough call there. And so, 2 brothers and their families. And we don't know much more about that at this point. They're listed in the ship manifest. The pictures on the right, I thought that was kind of neat. And they show some Canarians down there at the bottom. I kind of threw that in the slide. But for the most part, this is all we had. We knew they had children. And I thought that was neat. My cousin showed me the book by Den. I was like, oh, look, somehow I'm connected to these people. But I didn't know much more than that. I eventually run across this map digging through some old archived books that had old registers And someone had thrown a map in the book, and now I see this map all over the place. But originally I had ran across it and scanned it, didn't think much about it. And as you can see by the Foucher, you can also see uniquely Christabel's land plot. This is taken at some, this is drawn at some point after it's become a United States territory, and maybe not a state yet, but definitely no further than 1830 because, well, his name is still on the land plot, so you can kind of date the map a little bit. I have seen the original of this since then, and I cannot find it again. I desperately tried to get it on one of the slides, but for now, I'm just going to have to wait until the state of Louisiana has a better website, because they're not showing this map anymore. I can't find this land plot anymore, the original at least. However, his name is clearly there, and possibly one of his sons here. They don't show Gaspar, and it's possibly because they maybe have been living on the same land. I don't know. I know there were some land transactions with Gaspar much later on. He did purchase land and he did sell land quite often, and we have some of those records. But I thought this was unique, and maybe his land is a little further down. I'm not quite sure. I don't have the full map, and maybe somebody later can help me out with that. But you don't see all the names. You'll recognize a few, obviously, and Corbeau's and Hernandez's and such. But I think still this is very unique to say that this is the very beginning of the area, and that they are.
Do you know where that actually is in Donaldsonville? That piece of land now?
That's funny that you say that. I did do an experiment 2 or 3 years ago. I took this map and I superimposed it over a Google map to see who owns that land now. And I've actually driven by just to see. It doesn't look anything like I would recognize, of course. It just looks like somebody's, farmland, obviously. But yes, I actually have a map with this imposed right over it that you can see. I didn't think about putting in the slide. I'm sure I've left out a lot of information, y'all, but I can get you that kind of stuff, Jane. Sure. Yes, sir.
Typically in this kind of situation, the area where Cristobal would have had his land would also be probably tied into the land claims that they had.
Sure. And
later on the surveyor's maps. And that information is carried over to today on contemporary maps. You might want to look at some of the topo maps of the area. The 7.5-minute quad maps would probably show that section with a number and a township and a range and everything. And from that, you can easily, specifically find that property on the ground. And one very distinctive thing that I see is that long strip underneath. Which is not a typical 40 Orpin type of thing, but it's much longer. So
sure, and I think it was an Arab that, and I cut off his name. I believe it's actually here. He had a strip that went really far. The McCall was huge up in the north, area, and as well as if you look real carefully, notice in the far right, you see it says Church of the Ascension. The land was already mapped out, and they show that way on the far side. And you can see William Donaldson's property right around the time. A bit after, right in the corner, the niche of the fork of the road. The fork of the river. Excuse me. So this is also available on my website. So stare at it. You can make copies, and I can show you what book this comes out of. Yes, ma'am.
Can we get your website?
I will show all of that at the very end. Yes, ma'am. Absolutely.
And you did say it's still farmland. It's not really.
Well, there's houses, and I'm sure if you go further back, it's going to be, you can't say, well, here it stops and starts. You kind of just drive by and you observe from a road's distance. You don't really get a good view of it. There's not much there from what I can tell. It's spread up into lots of people's lands and plots now, so some of it's farmland.
Is that actually in Donaldsonville?
This would be in the outskirts today. I regret now not putting the today's map on top of this to show you. Maybe I can post that on the website. People can kind of take a look as well and see where all the plots. And this continues on. There's many more Islano families that continue on, and I don't show the northern part of the side, on the other side of the river, but it's all Acadian families on the other side. So it's neat to see all of them, how they go back and forth, and the stories of how Acadians didn't care for the Spanish all that much, to be honest with you. They thought they were lazy because all they wanted to do was eat and dance all day long. When I read some of that, I thought that was kind of funny.
Well, wait, isn't that the river up there on the end? Right hand corner?
Yes, that is the Mississippi, but you don't see any property. I cut off the map a little bit to show this piece here, yes. So I had this, and I thought this was unique at the time. Didn't really tell me too much, but it was neat to see, hey, look, they did settle in this area, and I'm in the right spot, right? At this point, I kind of start going through dates, and I'm not going to go through all of the trees. I mean, it's not going to be even possible to cover that in one day. So, but I can show you a little bit of Cristobal's side, and bring you on the journey of finding his information in Louisiana, using the sources I had shown you up on the first slide, and how he was born in 1750. I come to find out later. He did die in 1834 in Donaldsonville. He did marry into the Deniz family, and I'll find that out much later. The names are really messed up, but as far as the records show, I have to go through and use some creative logistics and understanding to figure out exactly what their full names were, and I'll eventually get their full names later. He did arrive in 1779 with his brother. He was granted land. We do see that in the records. And by some of the census records in 1789, you can see he's doing fairly well. And there's a few pieces that are up there. They have children on the left side, Catalina, Antonio, Miguel, Juana, and Domingo. And so I'm going to jump to Domingo's side. Look at his line. He was born in 1794. And we don't know anything about Antonio. We have not found any information, and I'm still currently looking at the churches in the Canaries to find out if I can get her full name as well as her birth dates and things like that. And then on the right side, you can see some of the Canarians that they did marry into, such as the Ruiz and Dominguez and such. So if you are Falcon, you're more than Falcon. You're connected with these other families as well. So keep that in mind. Here is Domingo's line. And he's born in 1794. He gets married in 1808, and he died by 1866 in Donaldsonville. And they pretty much all stayed in the same area. He marries into the Dominguez family. They're also Islamo as well. What's unique is that a lot of his children marry into the Carbo families. I believe at this time they were neighbors, close relatives, maybe just happened to be really good friends. A lot of his children marry into that family. And then a unique situation occurs. I want you to take note of Carmelite Antoinette. She was born in 1819 and makes the decision to marry Antoine Ramon Falcon, which spawns Joseph Julian Falcon Sr. as one of their children. We'll come to him a little bit later, but he's a very prominent Falcon in the Donaldsonville area, and his children end up becoming really well known as well during at the time. So I like to show this because this happens twice. We're cousins end up marrying cousins. So nothing uncommon, but this is a typical thing.
Before you leave there, that's where my great-grandfather comes from, Antoine Ramon and County, Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
That was exciting when I saw that. To me, puts everybody else asleep in my family, but to me it was exciting.
This seems like it would be a unique situation, but like I said, it happened twice in the Falcons, and I've uncovered it happening many more times in other names, so just keep that in mind.
Acadians too.
Oh, Acadians, of course, absolutely.
Yeah, first.